All right, welcome to this live stream. I'll be posting this on my channel. We're going to talk about some common mistakes made in English by both native speakers and language learners. So there's a very good chance if you either speak English or are learning English that you make these mistakes. Part of the problem is that we hear these mistakes all the time, so we assume they're right. Sometimes the person making the mistake doesn't realize it's an error in grammar. Sometimes it's part of their regional dialect that it's accepted to make certain mistakes. And sometimes they're aware that it's a mistake, but they make it anyway because, again, regional dialect, most the people where they live also make that mistake. They don't want to sound pretentious or condescending. So they also will make that mistake in order to sort of fit in with the locals. So it's really important that you know which mistakes you can also choose to make and which are less common. So we're going to break down some of the most common mistakes made in English so that you can understand why they're made, realize if you make it or not, and if it is a mistake that is acceptable to make or not. So first, let's dive into a very common mistake, which is me versus I. On my TikTok channel, Quick English Tips, this I get the most questions about. How do we know whether to use I or me? So let's dive in here. I is a subject pronoun. So that means it's always replacing the subject, a person's name. Aubrey went to the store. I went to the store. Because it's the subject pronoun, the subject usually goes at the beginning of the sentence. So a very quick tip that makes this pretty easy is if it's at the beginning of the sentence, usually it will be I. And if it's at the end of the sentence, that is when we need an object pronoun, me. So at the end of the sentence, usually that's where you would choose me. She goes to the store with me. The dog sits with me, right? At the end of the sentence, we're used to hearing me. Now, this becomes just a little bit more complicated when we have subjects with a person's name and especially multiple subjects. So let's say, for example, we have John and I, or John and me. I just got a question about this the other day. How do I know which to use? It depends on the sentence. Either could be correct depending on the sentence. If it's the subject, it will go usually at the beginning and it would be John and I went to the store. A good trick here is to eliminate the name and what would make sense. If you say John and me went to the store, eliminate John. Me went to the store. Absolutely not. So we know it's I went to the store. John and I went to the store. A much faster tip is just to think about I at the beginning of the sentence before the verb and me at the end of the sentence after the verb. This way you can immediately look at a sentence and know which one to use without eliminating the name in order to figure out if you need I or me. So let's take a few examples. Women as well, right? Shouldn't always be John and me. So a woman's name, Martha and I. Doesn't matter gender here. What matters is that it's a name, a proper noun. So Martha and I went to the store. But what about if we want to say that without the name? This gets a little tricky. A lot of people want to use her. If it's the subject, it should be she. She and I went to the store. Subject pronoun before the verb. But if it is at the end of the sentence, if it's the object pronoun, what the action is being done to, right? Direct objects, a little bit tricky. Usually at the end of the sentence, that is when it'll be her, right? Her and me. So this might sound a little strange to you because natives make mistakes so much with this, as well as language learners. You hear it incorrectly all the time. Also, there are two options. You can say her and me or me and her. They came to the store with her and me, or they came to the store with me and her. Politeness dictates that we put the her first, right? Put ourselves last, her and me, but we hear both all the time. One is not really more correct than the other. It's just more polite to put him or her first. So same with he, John and I, we would replace John with the pronoun he. He and I went to the store. And if it's the object of the sentence, usually coming at the end, it becomes him and me, or again, me and him would also work perfectly. They came to the store with him and me. They came to the store with me and him. Now, of course, it's not the very last word, the very first word. It's all about where these pronouns are in relation to the verb. If they come toward the verb, before the verb, which usually means at the beginning of the sentence, or do they come after the verb, which would mean the end of the sentence? If they come before the verb at the beginning, I, he, she, subject pronouns. If they come after the verb toward the end of the sentence, object pronouns, him, her, me.